founded our public relations and branding agency in Beijing, I've probably given 1,500 talks, maybe 2,000 talks. I don't think I've ever given a talk on the Great Firewall of China or a technical topic such as this. But given that this is a community of China hands, I thought it would be valuable to have a quick review of the technological systems that are impacting the way in which we're able to run our businesses in China. I wanted to talk about the Great Firewall because of all of the factors that my partners and I have faced in running our business in China. And we have offices in Beijing, Hong Kong, now also New York City, Chicago and Sydney. Of all of the factors in establishing our business in China and running our business in China, the Great Firewall has probably been the number 2 most important factor. Number 1 has always been human resources, always been finding good people, training good local people and inculcating the Illuminant methodologies into our local hires. But number 2 has always been the challenge we've had in getting access to internet resources, getting access to email, getting access to the ability to send and receive files to and from our clients in the West. The history of the Great Firewall of China began in 1994, when China was first opened or connected to the internet. When the internet was first connected to China, it was a completely open system. There was no filtering, there was no censorship. Admittedly, the connection was only to the most trusted research universities in Beijing, but it was very quickly obvious from the senior leadership in the Communist Party of China that an unregulated internet access would pose tremendous risks and threats to China's government. In 1998, during a period of tremendous turmoil around fears that the China Democracy Party would rise and challenge the Chinese Communist Party's hegemony in the country, China Democracy Party leaders were arrested, the party was banned, and simultaneously the internet was seen as the single greatest risk to the stability of the time and ongoing stability for the ruling party. So the Chinese Communist Party did initiate a research program which they called Golden Shield. And within several months, the first version of China's Golden Shield was launched inside of China. Now, many folks, especially folks in the West that don't run businesses in China, believe that the Great Firewall is simply a very large collection of routers that check internet traffic as it comes in and goes out of China. In actual fact, we view the Chinese Great Firewall as a number of supporting factors, only one of which is the technology that blocks the traffic coming in and going out. Firstly, the Great Firewall is a very sophisticated, arguably the world's most sophisticated internet packet sniffing and monitoring system. In theory, not in practice, but in theory, China's Great Firewall routing system is able to inspect every packet of information that travels from a computer or a mobile phone these days in China and the outside world and vice versa. Now, the traffic is growing so large that it's effectively impossible to monitor every single packet, but the system attempts to understand the nature and the content of every packet of information which flows into China and out. Now, the Great Firewall couldn't operate without a gigantic team of people, of employees, of government employees, many of which work in a particular building on the South 3rd Ring Road in Beijing. This enormous team of people is needed to monitor the internet, monitor trends, monitor keywords, monitor gossip and code words to keep the routing and filtering system calibrated. And the Great Firewall is also the mandatory culture of self-censorship, which has been rolled out to the internet industry in China and implemented by internet businesses across China. So this culture of self-censorship is absolutely one of the most important and fundamental pillars of the Great Firewall system of China. It's also important to remember, especially for many outsiders, that the Great Firewall not only monitors and filters traffic from China to the West, or China to the world, I should say, but also within China. So when there are particular uprisings or riots or problems in one province or city of China, then the rest of China can also be great firewalled off from that city or that province. So the system is very effective at ensuring that information is distributed only to Chinese citizens within areas that the government chooses to make that information available. The father of the Great Firewall of China is, according to Chinese netizens, arguably the least liked person on the internet. Fan Bingxing was born in 1960 in Harbin. He is a PhD in computer science, and he was contracted with the responsibility to build the initial Golden Shield project. And it's believed that today he still exercises a great deal of technical leadership for the ongoing development of the Great Firewall of China. And he does happen to have a Sina Weibo account. He has been interviewed a number of times over the years, and as one would expect, in every interview which has ever appeared from Feng, he has expressed great pride in the work that he undertook to create China's internet censorship system. Now, how the GFW works. The Great Firewall works on a number of fairly simple but extremely effective techniques. Firstly, it blocks IP addresses. I'm sure we're all aware of the blacklist of IP addresses, which enables some websites and some services to be available in China and others to be blocked, either blocked for a particular period of time or forever. Now, all servers that are on the IP blocking blacklist are inaccessible to all people inside of China. We do say Chinese netizens here, but we should probably point out that Chinese netizens and foreign business people and foreign academics and even tourists in China are all living and operating and working within the same Great Firewall system. The Great Firewall also is very effective at URL filtering, that is web address filtering. So any web address and remember, a web address is an address to a page, not always to a website. The internet really is a collection of pages rather than sites. So any URL or any web address which has a keyword which appears on a blacklist can be dynamically blocked. And a punishment, a 5-minute punishment or timeout is sent to the individual who attempted to access that URL. DNS poisoning is a very effective system also. Because China's DNS or domain name system service is internal, there is a very simple technique for the authorities to redirect traffic. So if the government doesn't want you going to google.com, they will simply either block access to google.com or reroute or request going to google.com to a Chinese search engine. Deep packet sniffing is relatively new. This is a probing into the very data packets that are being sent to and from machines in China. Deep packet sniffing is very effective. So even if the URL is innocuous, if the content of your email or your web page contains sensitive keywords, then that information is blocked. Either blocked for a 5-minute timeout or a connection reset or permanently. The internet service providers also contribute to the Great Firewall of China. Every internet service provider does have its own internet censorship rules. These are rarely published publicly, but are obviously implemented internally. And interestingly, this culture of self-censorship has made the ISP's censorship even more severe than the government's own censorship. So while the government has its own list of blocked keywords, the ISPs block far more keywords. We often see, for example, that Weibo posts or blog posts which simply mention the name of China's president are blocked or deleted. Now, there's no central regulation from the government that we're aware of that says you may not ever speak the president's name. But the internet service providers will usually err on the side of greater conservatism and execute that kind of block. Also, remember that the ISPs, if you see that YouTube is blocked on one particular ISP, it doesn't mean that it's not blocked on another ISP altogether. So you see, the internet service providers in China really are complicit with the blocking system. We all acknowledge the reality and existence of the Great Firewall of China. There is one very large and influential stakeholder which believes that such a wall does not exist. That's China's government. China's government up to today has never publicly acknowledged the existence of any form of internet filtering or censorship. This is what's known as a technical non-existence, and it does play a vital part in keeping the system running. Younger Chinese netizens, that is those that joined the internet after the early 2000s, largely don't consider the Great Firewall to be a big problem. They don't remember a time in which services were not available. So generally, if a younger netizen notices that a foreign site is not available or a domestic site is not available, they'll usually, according to market research that we've been doing for many years in China, they'll usually presume that there's a technical problem with the remote server, with the web server, and not it's a forbidden piece of information from their eyes. The seasoned netizens, those who are online for much longer, are progressively smaller, are smaller in number every year. So eventually we presume them to go away and the Great Firewall to simply be a part of the furniture, a part of the environment in which Chinese citizens are operating. The Chinese Great Firewall blocks several main categories of content. Obviously, the number one category of content which is blocked is anything containing unwanted political comments or political news or political content or economic content or even business content if it impacts Chinese government policies, either stated or unstated policies. This is all done in the name of maintaining social stability, and of course sites which are connected to or even reference organisations such as Falun Gong, the Tibetan independence movement, the Xinjiang independence movement, Taiwan, or the Tiananmen 1989 massacres are of course completely blocked from inside of China. Historically, all pornographic and gambling sites that were known would be blocked in China. Increasingly, there's been some liberalisation. Just over recent months, there's been some liberalisation for a small number of pornographic and gambling sites, and we'll get to that a little later. Of course, any site or service which directly threatens Chinese government's ability to maintain its control over power is blocked. Therefore, Google, as a company which has publicly stated that censorship exists in China, is a persona non grata. Random sites and services are blocked for no apparent reason. I'm sure we've all encountered that, especially websites that are under the .Hong Kong, Japan or Taiwan, top-level domains. And I think for many of our clients who arrive in China for their first ever market visit to discover that they can't get their email or their website is not visible, it's usually not because their website is saying something critical to China's government. Rather, it's their website or their email service is sitting on a shared server that may be sitting on a server system with 10,000 or even 100,000 other websites. So it only takes one of those websites on a shared server to be blocked by China's authorities for every single one of the websites on that server system to be also forbidden. So most of the time, for SME and business websites and email services that are blocked in China, it's just bad luck. Self-regulation is, as I mentioned a little earlier, a very important part of the Great Firewall system. It goes without saying that internet companies in China are highly vulnerable to the organs of China's government. There are regulations governing the types of information and operations that Chinese internet and foreign internet companies can operate within in China, but there are also obviously many random stakeholders in positions of power in China. A given provincial party secretary or a mayor may take exception to a news story or a blog or a website, or perhaps a competitor of one of his colleagues or his son. So really there are just an uncountable number of stakeholders in China which have the ability to influence the internet service providers and content companies to either take down sites or content or to block sites. Naturally, Chinese internet companies and foreign internet companies are eager to operate openly, so they tend to be extremely conservative with their filtering policies. In November 2012, I'm sure many of us in this room would be familiar with the extremely sophisticated new upgrade which was rolled out on the Chinese Great Firewall just a couple of months ago. What happened in November 2012 is that the unthinkable happened. The seemingly impossible happened. Virtual private networks became detectable by the Great Firewall. Previously, virtual private networks, not just those operating in China, but those operating worldwide, were thought to be completely invulnerable, completely obscure. That's the whole idea of a virtual private network after all. By being on a virtual private network, one thinks that what you're doing on the internet is confidential and can't be seen by anybody without the keys at either end of the VPN. Well, in November 2012, technology was introduced to the Great Firewall over a period of about 2 weeks that was able to find VPNs running in businesses or even in people's bedrooms or living rooms and shut them down. So the world of security, computers and internet security was really flabbergasted by Chinese Great Firewall's new ability to detect and shut down VPNs. As of this week, in which we put these slides together, a small number of VPN protocols are still occasionally working, but the very popular ones, PPTP, OpenVPN, the world leader in open source VPN technology, and SSTP are all completely blocked inside of China. Currently, L2TP, IPsec, IKE version 2, and Cisco IPsec are sometimes working in China. There are rumours online this week in China that adding a second level of encryption on top of the OpenVPN encryption layer is somewhat effective in getting a connection up with the West. But for all effective means, it's never been more difficult to use the internet, or at least the foreign internet, within China. It does bear noting that there is a regulatory framework promulgated by the Chinese government which can make VPNs legal. So if you're a business and you need to use the internet in China, you can go to the Ministry of Information Industry and get a license for using VPN. But you must hand over your encryption keys to the Chinese government, which is roughly analogous to handing over your front door key to your home. So anyone with those keys is able to decrypt and therefore read all of the internet traffic flowing between both ends of the VPN. So I'm not aware of any business in China which does use one of these legal VPNs. Now, since the big crackdown or the big technology upgrade in November, we've been really amazed that some sites have been un-Great Firewalled or unblocked. It seems that the Chinese regulators, or rather the censorship group, is attempting to throw some new liberal, a small number of liberalised sites to Chinese netizens in the hope that netizens won't necessarily notice that most of the internet is still blocked. We've seen, interestingly, a small number of porn sites from the United States be unblocked. Specifically, Pornhub.com and BabeStation.com seem to be available all over China all of the time, which we find quite interesting that the regulators are choosing to expose a small number of these kinds of sites. And also the most popular Chinese video streaming site, nicovideo.jp, is now available. Okay, so the impact of the Great Firewall since it was created in the late 90s has been, we believe, to add to the general level of daily unhappiness of normal citizens in China. It's been a very severe impact on foreign businesses when one is operating a business inside of China without the ability to use Google Docs or Dropbox or any form of file transfer. It's extremely challenging on business and businesses' ability to operate. Because of the deep packet sniffing, all of international traffic coming in and out of China is extremely slow. I'm sure we've all experienced slow internet from US and other foreign sites. According to research we did just this week, innocuous sites in the US, such as Xbox.com, are showing greater than 500 millisecond ping times, where an internal domestic site such as QQ.com is showing what you'd get anywhere else in the world, under 10 millisecond latency. Also, Chinese internet companies must maintain large numbers of content monitoring personnel to continue to support the system of self-regulation. And of course, there are frequent occurrences of intellectual property misappropriation. Chinese companies who choose to clone Groupon or Pinterest or Facebook or Twitter or any other innovative foreign site are able to do so with a level of protection because they know that that foreign site will never be available, or at least isn't currently available in China. So there is effectively no competition if you choose to create a Pinterest clone. Tips for China hands that are visiting China. Be sure that before you go to China, you purchase, configure and test your VPN service on your laptop before you leave for China. Don't leave it until you get to China to try to set up a VPN. Avoid VPN providers that mention an ability to get through China's censorship. I mean, those are the VPN providers that are specifically targeted by the group that manages the Great Firewall. So try to find a VPN provider that doesn't mention China. Pick a service that offers many different connection types, including the 3 or 4 that seem to be working this week. Don't rely on social media, your Western social media. It's completely inaccessible within China. Test your email from within China. Have someone from your China office or your China consultant or your China law firm or even a friend to see if they can get email before you leave. And if not, take alternative measures. And use and monitor really good sites such as greatfire.org that are very effective at allowing you to test what is and isn't blocked inside of China. For foreign internet enterprises or any company that's looking to create a website that will face Chinese consumers, you must delete all references to websites which are blocked. So if you have links to Google services, if you have links to Facebook pages from your China-facing website, you must delete those links and those references, otherwise you will be blocked in China. You especially must remove tweet buttons and like buttons and all of that other family of Western social media buttons. They will break your pages and greatly slow Chinese experiences of your website. Be sure that you use a dedicated server with a dedicated IP address. Don't host your server on a shared system with hundreds or thousands of other services. Be sure that your hosting company is able to give you a clean or unblocked IP address when your site does become blocked. And formally incorporate within China if possible. Self-regulation is probably easier than trying to fight City Hall. Thanks.